Hey guys, back to another YouTube video. Today it's going to be a showing off video. Now, as those who may remember, my friend JR sent me a huge package of knives a couple days ago. And this past week, I have been working on all these, getting his knife bundle done to send back. And I have all the knives done that he wanted me to send back. And I will also show off the ones he said I can keep. So one bag's got the knives I will have to send back. And these are the knives I'm keeping. I will first show off the knives I worked on for JR and explain what all I did to each knife. So the first one I'll pull out is this USMC Palco fighting knife that JR sent me. As those who may remember, this did not have a handle and did not have a pommel, and it was very beat up. And my friend JR told me to not only restore this, but to put a new handle on it, but a plastic handle. So I granted his request. I completely restored the blade, put a nice patina back on it, and left the USMC and the Palco on the other side. And this one, I chose the color red for the plastic because the US Marine Corps flag is red. So I figured it would go good with the history of this knife. And I used reinforced airplane plastic with red spacers and an old bolt for the pommel. And basically made it sort of like a trench art knife. My friend JR is very happy with this. He loved how this turned out. And that's basically it. This one is one of my favorites, but JR said he's planning on keeping this one. And by the time this video comes out, JR will have already received the knives. This is another one he had me work on. This one originally had a leather stacked handle, but on accident the tang broke, so I gave him a choice. He can either, I'll send it back to him and he can do whatever he wants to it, or I can take it and make it into a small little hunting knife, put a stag handle on it. And he said to go ahead and do the stag, which I did. I put a new stag handle on it, reused the original guard, and refurbished the blade. Now it looks a lot better. And I'm going to send him back the spare parts because that's what we agreed on. That one. And it is hot today. Excuse me. This one. This one was a major pain, because I told JR to give me a challenge, and he did. This is a cut-down M1 Garand bayonet that someone modified after the war. And JR basically told me to take the plastic handles off and put wooden-handled ones on there. This was not an easy process. Making these was no easy task. I had to take the plastic handles off and trace them and hand-fit them. I didn't do this by machine. This was all done by hand. And then I hand-riveted these rivets onto it. And darn, it turned out pretty well. And JR is very happy with this, and he loves it. Very nice little combat knife, would still do a lot of numbers on somebody. So there's that one. Trying to save the two biggest ones for last. Next is this Bowie knife he wanted me to do a plastic handle on. And this is another one he sent me. The guard originally was not with it. He sent me a guard to fit onto this blade, and I did. And then I chose a plastic with blue inlays and shaped it all together and rounded the pommel down to right here, because he said he specifically wanted this type of guard where it's flush with the handle and a guard protrudes right here, almost like a buck knife. And it turned out very well. My friend JR is very happy with this because I've been sending him pictures of the process. And man, that one goes good in my hand. Next is, this one. This one is going to be a surprise, which is why I haven't posted this video yet. This is a German hunting knife that he had sent me. Did not have a guard, did not have a handle, didn't even have a pommel. And he sent me a guard and pommel to put on this. And he said basically to do whatever I want with the handle. And since this is a German blade, it's very old and it is very well made, I decided to go with a multiple stag stack up, where it's like 4 pieces of stag and 1 piece of leather right here, all put on together and epoxied. Man, that came out very beautiful. And it's so unique, and it grips right to your hand perfectly. And it originally had a swoop right here in the blade, but someone had eventually grounded that down, and I basically filed it flush, so you can't even tell that it was filed. So JR, I hope you're happy with this one, because this one is a surprise. He doesn't know about this one yet, but by the time this video is posted, he will. Next is this one that didn't go as to plan. This is another old German knife he had me fix up. It's got General Custer on the back of it. And this one originally had a guard with another ball right here. And what had happened is he told me just try to straighten the guard out, and he said if it breaks, it would be okay. Well, sadly, it ended up breaking because I gently just tapped it, just gently, and it snapped. And I figured out why. This guard isn't even made out of brass, it's made out of pewter, which if you bend it, it's very brittle. And JR basically told me to clean up the blade, make it look a lot nicer, and clean up all the parts, and just put it back together and send it back to him, because he'll put a new guard on this. So I didn't epoxy it, I cleaned up all the parts, and cleaned up the blade, and put it all back together. Still came out pretty well. Next is... Next is this little fixed blade that he sent me that he said was part of a kid's knife. All he wanted me to do was put some handles on it, and I did. It's full tang. Makes a great little camp knife. And this one I particularly saved for the last one because it's the easiest one I could ever do. So this one I saved for last of all the ones I was working on. Came out pretty well. JR, I hope you're happy with this one. And then last but not least is the two giant Bowie knives he wanted me to put handles on, those who remember in the previous video. These, I will admit, was kind of a challenge because I'm not used to doing giant blades like this, but I do them here and there. So here's the first one. Now, as those who may remember, this did not have a handle, did not have a guard, and it was completely just unfinished, and I finished it up. I hand polished it and put an edge on it and put a handle and guard on it. The handle and guard are both made out of aluminum, and the handle is made out of hickory. And the pommel itself I made out of a, what's this called? Oh yeah, this is a cup to a fence post. Those little cups that you go right on the fence, and it helps you hook each piece together. And they make great pommels. Again, I love using recycled material. The guard was bar stock aluminum. Came out very well, and it has got some weight to it. Definitely this is something you would want to have at the Alamo. And the tang goes all the way through the handle. It does not partial, it goes all the way through. So it's basically like a stick tang. And it's as thick as the guard, which is how you want it with a knife this big. And then this one is another one that JR sent me. This one's got some special firework on the blade that I preserved. And again, I had to put an edge on this, which is not a problem. And I put a guard and pommel and handle, again, not a problem. And I repolished the engraving because the engravings right here were rusted. So I took my wire brush and got all that rust out and then started to hand polish. Darn bugs, get out of here. And then I started to hand polish each and every little dent, and now it looks a lot better. Again, beautiful pieces. And I made the handles look almost identical, just so it kind of makes a unique pair. And JR has said he's got sheets for these, so awesome, man. Now, the agreement was 10 knives in exchange for the 20, so... But, since there's only 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, there's 9 knives in total. And he told me that he wanted me to send him another knife of his pick that he wanted. And he picked out one of my plastic handle knives, but he said I can send him whichever one that I wanted to send. And I picked out the brass one that's got brass inlays with a file blade, and I know he's going to love this one. He loves these kind of works I do. So JR, I hope you're happy with this knife when you receive it, and I know you'll love it. And as a little bonus, I've kept this around for a while, but I just generally don't want it anymore. I'm going to give this to you, JR, for free. It's an old cake knife that has no brand on it, but I know you love antique stuff like this, and I will happily give this to you without a problem. So that's all the knives that I have to send back to JR. Put it all back in the bag. So 10 knives as we agreed, but I'm going to send him 11, LOL. Put this all back in here. And man, this is not easy. And then next is to show off the knives that he said I can keep. First off is the bayonet, and I was actually able to find out what this is. I actually wrote it down. It's a World War I M1, let me rephrase that, World War I M1892 bayonet that was cut down probably during the war, or it broke, and who knows what kind of thing this thing's been through. And I'm going to leave it as is. I'm not going to try to put new grips on it because I want to leave it in its condition. I cleaned all the rust off of it, but I'm not going to attempt to, fix it up because it's not going to look new again. I'm going to leave it as is. I will get a bayonet case for it later on, but as is, I'm going to leave it alone. Thank you very much, JR. He knows I love stuff like this. And he also gave me this dagger that I restored. Well, sort of restored it. I didn't touch the blade. I wanted to leave it in its original condition, so I just restored the handle. And man, that turned out really good. And the sheath JR actually gave with me, and after doing some homework on it, I was able to determine that this is India made, not Indian, India made. Because this particular dagger is very common design there, and this is a design they do all the time. And thanks JR for the knife and the sheath. That's awesome. Right there, take a sip. That's good. Alright. Next is this charade knife that he said I can keep. And this one I've actually already sold. And that's another reason I'm doing this video, is because 2 of these knives I've already sold. And this is one of them. My friend Jesse bought that one from me. Next is one of the Imperial fixed blades. All the Imperial fixed blades he said I can have, and I'll clean them all up. And I've already got one cleaned up, but it's on the dry rack, so I can't really get it out right now. So this is one of the Imperial fixed blades. And this is a unique little handmade piece that someone made. He said I can keep. This one I will leave as is. I'll blast all the rust off of it and put a better edge on it and make it kind of like a little chopper. So thank you, JR. That's awesome. Next is this Imperial fixed blade. This is another one that my friend Jesse bought from me with this one. So another reason I'm doing this video. Next, another part of the Imperials. Let me get the other one out. That one. Not that one. That one. Where did you go? Grabbed it. Oh, here it is. Here it is. First is this pair of Imperials that I'm going to keep when I get them restored. These have serrated backs. And what I love about these is they're stamped on opposite sides. Let me see if I can show it to y'all. Here's the Imperial stamp. It's not on this side. You flip it around. It's on this side, not on this side. So these two I'm going to restore and actually keep. So thank you, JR. Next is this cake knife. I'm going to put a stag handle on it, and this one I'm actually going to sell because I don't keep these kind of knives. Unless they're a good brand. Next is this Colonial Boy Scouts knife. This one I'm going to clean up and keep as well because I don't have one of these. Next is this Japanese pilot's knife. This one, again, I'm going to keep and restore and put in my military collection. Next is this other Imperial fixed blade. Again, I'm going to clean it up and probably sell it. And same with this one. This is a Colonial fixed blade. I don't have one of these, so this one I'm actually going to clean up and keep for myself. Next is one of the Imperial no-name blades. Well, this one had a handle and guard, but the guard's long since I stripped off and reused on another knife. So this is just a no-name blade. And this is the German blade that y'all saw that had a broken handle that I already took the handle off. Again, I'll clean these up and probably sell them. I don't know yet. And this was on another knife that had a weird-looking handle. This one, again, I'm gonna make into another knife. And then next is this Imperial. This one I'm going to strip down for parts. I've already got one like this, and this blade is really beat up. So this one I'm going to strip down, restore, and probably put for sale. And last but not least is the little Kent knife he gave me. That just says patent pending. I'm going to do some research on it and then decide whether or not I will sell it or not. Phew. And then last but not least is the last Imperial fixed blade. Again, all the Imperials I will clean up, and whichever ones I like the most, I will keep, and the ones I don't want, I'll sell off. I've already sold 2 items. Go back in here. But I hope y'all enjoyed the video. Thank you very much, JR. This is an awesome project. I look forward to the next one. And as always, stay sharp.